Hello Stampers, how are you today? I am here to show you some very simple card making. I'm gonna go through everything very detailed today. We're gonna make this Dragonfly Garden card. See, it's very simple, very straightforward. This is a great card for beginners. I used it at a workshop with some folks that had not done any card making before, and it's a great way to kind of learn just a few different techniques. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a beautiful card. You could easily replicate this with other stamp sets and use just this basic layout to make lots of different cards. So let me show you how we're doing this. So as I said, we're using the Dragonfly Garden stamp set. It actually comes in a bundle with this wonderful punch. And as you can see, you can punch out two different dragonflies. We're going to use this stamp and these little dragonflies here and the sentiment. And then on the inside, I actually did a little different sentiment. I'll show you what I did. I used a happy birthday. So you can use whatever you have in your stash. As a matter of fact, my happy birthday came from the Peaceful Moments stamp set, which is one of my favorites. It just is a great one. You need to have it in your stash because it's really got sentiments for every occasion. Sympathy, thank you, happiness. This could be, congratulations and happiness for a wedding or an anniversary. Thinking of you with deepest sympathy. And of course, I'm going to use the happy birthday. This is a great set. It's in the annual catalog. My name is Linda Edwards. I am with Crafty Heron Designs, and I hold card classes in my studio at home. If you're in the Greensboro, Georgia area, would love for you to join me. I also offer stamp at home, create at home card kits. And if you do not have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you would like to order any of the materials, would love for you to visit me at my online store. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Post on the forum, and if you like what you see, I would love for you to follow me. I do try to get several videos out a month, and I like to keep them pretty straightforward and simple. This one may be a little bit more in detail than most, just because it's really geared for somebody who's just starting out. This is a good one to start with. So let's get started. So the first thing we'll do is go through the materials that you will need for this card. So you will need your card base. I'm using the thick basic white card base. It's cut at 8.5 by 5.5 and scored at 4 1/4. You can get 2 card bases from any piece of cardstock. Score it first at 4 1/4 and then cut it at 5.5. So that's the card base. I like to use the thick card base, especially because this card doesn't have a lot of layers, so it gives it a little more heft. The next layer this is a Flirty Flamingo. It's cut at 5.5 by 2 1/4. And then I'm using Designer Series paper. This one is cut at 5 inches by 1 3/4 inches. And I wanted, because we're going to emboss this layer, I wanted a little more room around the outside than I would normally do. Generally, when I layer, I leave about 1/8 of an inch on all 4 sides, but I wanted a little bit more, and you'll see why. So we are going to stamp on Designer Series paper. We typically think about stamping on solid colors cardstock, but I wanted to demonstrate that you can easily stamp on Designer Series paper as well. This particular paper is actually available right now as a free item during Celebration. It is the Sunshine and Rainbows paper. As you can see, there are lots of different colors and designs there. That's the one that I'm using. Some are very subtle backgrounds and some are more bold. You would need a subtle background if you're going to stamp on it. But most papers have both. They have something really bold on one side and then something more subtle on the other. So you might not originally think that, that this paper would come from this because it's very different, but I think it works really, really well. So let's get started. So the first thing, and then of course you'll need a scrap. Excuse me, I forgot. You'll need a scrap for a scrap of basic white for the Dragonfly. So the first thing I like to do when I get started is to fold and burnish my my card base. And then I generally set it aside so that it doesn't get ink or anything on it while I'm doing my other stamping. I generally like to start with the stamping. So that is what we are gonna do today. I am gonna bring in a piece of scrap paper to put underneath my stamp, underneath my paper before I stamp it. I need that one. Not always necessary, but I like to use the lines of the paper in when I'm kind of eyeing where I'm stamping that that stamp. So this is the Dragonfly Garden. This is the long piece. This is a cling stamp. We have two different kinds at Stampin' Up. We have photopolymer and cling. You can see this one already has foam in it, so you don't need any additional padding. I'm using the Memento black ink, and because this stamp is larger than the ink pad, I'm going to actually pick up the ink pad and stamp onto the stamp rather than the other way around, because you certainly could do this, but I find that when the stamp is bigger than the ink pad, that I prefer to go ahead and apply the smaller ink pad to the stamp. This also allows me to really see how well I am getting ink on my stamp. And as you can see, I got ink on my fingers because I'm talking and not paying attention. But just kind of pay attention to that because you don't want to get ink on your paper. So I go ahead, I have ink on my stamp set. If this is new to you, I always recommend that you get used to this particular stamp. If you're not real familiar, if you haven't done a lot of stamping before, there's a difference between the way the photopolymer and the cling stamps react. They're thick, the cling is a little thicker. So I say always start by lining up, practicing on your sheet of paper, scrap paper. And this could just be a piece of photocopy or scrap mail, old mail that you're just saving. So as you saw, I put the stamp on there. I'm just going to press on it. Don't rock the stamp. Just press, let that paper absorb it, and I have a really good impression. And I've had a feel for what that is going to feel like. So the problem when you rock is if you got any ink on the edges of the stamp, that ink will transfer onto your paper. So that's why you don't want to rock. You want to just press, hold, let it absorb a little bit, and then take it off. And I'm going to clean this stamp in between uses. I want to make sure that I have always a nice clean stamp. So after every time I do clean it, of course I usually do that off camera. But again, I wanted you to see this because this video is kind of designed, if you're new, to give you lots of little tips and tricks on how to be successful in your stamping. This is a chamois. It's actually the material that you use to dry your car. This one is nice and thick. It's thicker than what you might normally have from your automotive company, from automotive store or whatever. But it works really beautifully to clean off the stamp. As you can see, there's a lot of staining on here. Not a problem. You just wet it, rinse it out underneath the faucet, and it is good to go again. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and re-ink my. The other difference is in the ink pads. This Memento ink is actually got kind of a it's a fabric, almost like a linen fabric, and it's very stiff. I'm going to show you when we use the other ink pad, it's a little different. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So I just want this to kind of be centered on this piece of paper. I can look through. It doesn't really matter if it's straight because of the design of the flowers. It's kind of a loose design. So I'm just trying to make sure that I've got that I'm going to get a stamp only on the Designer Series paper. So there we go. See that? Isn't that pretty? Nice and simple. Very straightforward. Now, before I put this away, I am also going to use this. I cleaned that off camera. I'm also going to use this for the envelope. So I have just a basic white envelope here. I'm going to ink up this wildflower garden again. And this time I'm going to have it off my envelope a little bit. Oh, and I want to open that up so that it doesn't create a fold underneath. And I'm just going to stamp right there. I just like to decorate the envelopes. It gives the receiver a little hint, a little clue that something special is inside. And of course, the easiest way to do that is to go ahead and use whatever stamp that you're using in your card to coordinate with it. So as you can see, I would have gotten ink all over my table had I not had this piece of paper. But I'm still got plenty of room. I can send this through the mail, and it's ready to go. So the next thing I'm going to stamp is the inside of my card. Actually, let's stamp the outside. So I'm going to open up my card. I want it to be totally open. I'm stamping directly on the card base. And in order to line it up, I'm just going to kind of, this is where this is going to go. I'm just going to lay it down here so that I can see where I want my sentiment to go. It's going to be over here on the right. So I'm going to use that same ink. This time, the sentiment is smaller than the ink pad, so it's perfectly, I think it works best to go ahead and stamp the stamp onto the ink pad. Now, again, the cling stamp sets, you can't really see through, so you don't really know if this is going to be straight or not. So once again, I'm going to test it on my paper. I always tell my girls, when they're coming in class too, let's make sure that this is straight. Test your ink there. And yep, it looks like it's going to be straight. So I know, I have confidence then when I go ahead and do this on my paper that as long as I am straight, that at least the stamp should be. So more important when there are words, right? So now I'm going to take this and I just want to make sure that I'm not going to stamp on that piece there. I'm kind of at the can you see that? Let me move up. Sorry, I don't think you can see that. There we go. All right. All right. So I'm just kind of eyeballing where I want that to go. Voila. Okay. And then I will clean that off. And then the next thing I'm going to stamp is the inside of the card. And I have that happy birthday sentiment. Take a look at that. Again, I'm testing my stamp to make sure it's straight. That was a little crooked. Let me try that one more time. Make sure, do I have it lined up straight? Yep. See how it runs down a little bit on the right compared to the lines? So I'm going to make an adjustment when I stamp it to just kind of rotate it up just a hair. So the other option is certainly to use the Stamparatus. Oh, that worked. But if you don't have the Stamparatus, then this is a better way. This is as good a way as any to do it. So now I'm going to bring in another ink color. This is the Flirty Flamingo ink. And I am going to use these little dragonflies, make sure we've got them the right way. And I'm going to stamp off. So this, when you stamp off, that just means that you stamp once, and then the second time is going to be lighter. So you can get, and there's even a third time, you can get 3 different colors from one ink pad just by stamping off. So that's a little too harsh for me. And that one is okay. It's a little light, so I'm going to go ahead. I know that I want to stamp off once to get a little lighter color. And I'm just kind of lining this one like that. Re-ink again, stamp it off, and then kind of like that. There we go. Just kind of a little fun something on the inside of the card. Clean that one up. All right, so that's the stamping for the card base. Now we need to stamp our dragonfly. Let's see. So I'm going to close up that particular ink color because I don't need that one again. And I'm going to stamp the Dragonfly. So I'm going to bring in the black. I am using the Memento black ink for this again because we're going to color this Dragonfly, and we're going to use blends. Blends are alcohol markers. So when you're coloring with an alcohol marker, you need an outline that is not going to run on you. So I'm going to go ahead there. I think that was perfect. That's the black Memento ink. Works really well with the blends. As a matter of fact, so that I remember that, I write that on the outside of my ink pad. Use with Stampin' Blends. So I know that when I'm going to use the blends, I want that to use that ink. Now, because this is a Memento, it's fade resistant. It is a dye ink, but I want to make sure it's really good and dry before I color. So I'm going to set that aside and assemble this card so that that's really good and dry. Now, normally it dries really quickly, but because of the alcohol, I don't want to take any chances. So I'm going to let that dry while we assemble the rest of the card. Okay, so this, I'm going to set that aside because we are going to bring in the Big Boss, the cut and emboss machine. Now, you could use the big or the small one. I am going to bring in the big one for this. We're going to use this Meadow Moments embossing folder. It is one of two that comes, it's a two-piece set that comes in the annual catalog. It's got just some really cute little butterflies and vines, and I just thought it was cute with this Dragonfly Garden stamp set. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to bring, let's see if you can see this. I think you can see that, right? So I've got my base plate, and the plates will tell you what you need to do. So this is plate number 1. I'm using an embossing folder. You always insert your embossing folder with the hinge first, and then it'll tell you which other plates you need. So with a standard embossing folder, which is what this is, I just need the base plate, number 1, and a number 3 plate. So normally you get the base plate and 2 of these plates with your machine when you purchase it. So I'm going to go ahead. That's not right, is it? No, I need 2 of those base plates. You can see 2 of them. I'm confusing myself here. So we have 2 different kinds of embossing folders. We have the standard embossing folder, and then we have another one that's called a 3D embossing folder. It's thicker than the standard one. So that's why it's important to know what your sandwich should look like. So there we go. So I've got the 2 base plates, and I'm just running that through the machine one time. And then it is ready to go. Take that away. There you go. And now you can use either side of that embossing. This is kind of the debossed side, or there's the raised side, which is the embossed side. And I think I'm going to go ahead and use the embossed side. So I am going to now attach this layer together. And I like to use liquid glue when I attach the 2 layers together, especially with something that's being embossed, because they're all those, it's uneven. I want to make sure that that glue has a chance to get in there and get in all those nooks and crannies so that it holds. All right, here we go. And now I'm going to, before I add that layer onto my card base, I'm going to add some linen thread. I love the linen thread. I feel like it's a really natural, has a natural look to it, which I like with this set, you know, this dragonflies and wildflowers, and it just seems like it's all really nice and natural. So the easiest way to do this, I am going to tie a bow, and you could tie this all the way around and tie your bow, but you know, it's tough to tie a bow when you're number 1, when you're on camera, but number 2, when you're trying to hold it tight, right? So I find the best way to do this is to go ahead and just attach this all the way around, and I went around 3 times, And I'm just using regular Scotch tape. You don't need anything fancy for this. It's not going to show. Regular Scotch tape holds very nicely. And then I can kind of adjust this the way I want it to look. I don't know how I did that on my nail. Anyway, it's a tough business, this crafting, this paper crafting. Okay, and now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and slip it underneath there, and then I can just tie the bow that way. It's just much easier than trying to hold everything and tie the bow. So when you're tying a bow, it's the old, I don't know if you were a Girl Scout, I was a Girl Scout, and we learned how to tie a square knot, and it's left over right. Oh my goodness, I can't do this. And under, so left over right. And then it's gonna be, I make that loop, right over left. No, it's right over left, left over right. Oh, sorry, I'm confusing you. Right over left, that was the first thing I did. Took the right side, went over the left side, then I'm gonna make the loop, and it's left over right. And then I pull that through, and then I can adjust it. And see how they both come down. There we go. And then I can adjust that. I like to kind of hold it where the knot is as I pull it so it doesn't twist. And you just adjust it however you want it. And I'll start with a long tail. I can always cut it shorter. And I am going to go ahead and put a little glue dot under there. It's not absolutely necessary because this isn't going to go anywhere. The reason I'm doing it is because if my my knot is a little wonky, the glue dot will help it stick in place. So that's why I like to add the glue dot. And I know what I did with my take your pick tool. All right, so since I can't find it, I'm gonna go ahead and just use this. That's what happens. You know, it's really, I don't really have too messy of a studio, but for some reason, I seem to have misplaced my take your pick tool. So I can use my scissors. You would use it the same way. And I'm just gonna kind of curl up this glue dot into a little smaller piece. You can see that. And then I'm just gonna lift this up and set it there. And that way, if these ends need to be kind of controlled, I can kind of make sure that they're right on that glue dot. So there you have it. All right. And so now I am ready to go ahead and attach the two pieces together. I'm telling you, this card really does come together pretty easily, but I think it really has a wow factor to it. So there we go. I need my Stampin' Dimensionals. Because it's a long piece, I want to make sure I have enough dimensionals to really make sure that it's raised and it doesn't sag. So I always do all four corners. I mean, you could use the double-sided foam tape as well. That would certainly work. But this works as well. And as you see, I did kind of go over the linen thread, give it a little more, so it's a little more secure. And I'm just going to take these backs off. Now these dimensionals, you know, they're foam and they're sticky on both sides. So when you pull them off the paper, the sticky part is what you attach to your base. And then you can wait to take the other side off. Wait until you're ready to adhere it. All right, so now, as I said, I have this here. I'm kind of just eyeballing. It is top to bottom. It's the same width or height as the card base. So I do want a little bit of white showing on the left. I just happen to like the way that looks. You could go all the way over if you'd like. All right, that part is done. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to color our dragonfly. Set that aside. that card base is done, and I'm going to bring in some of these blends. So I actually don't need, oh, no, I don't need that one. That was for another card. Okay, so the body, I'm going to color with this light mint macaron. And I'm going to start with, the blends have two ends. They've got a narrow tip and a brush tip. And you can see the brush tip, it is like a paintbrush. It's really soft, so you really need to treat it. Oh my goodness, look at that. Did you see that? Not to worry. Bring that end. And I'm just gonna, if that happens to you, not to worry. Sometimes you need a needle nose plier, but that worked just fine. You can see that came out. It's not a problem. Never had that happen before, but you know, of course those things happen on camera, right? Okay, so now there's not a lot of space here. I am not worried about shading with this, just because it's such a small area. You won't really notice it anyway, but I am gonna do some shading on the wings. So I have a light and a dark Flirty Flamingo. That's the same color as the card base. So I like to start with the dark end. I am gonna start with the brush end this time. And now you basically, wherever you think you want your shading to be is where you're gonna color. And if you feel like you're a little shaky and you'd prefer, you can use the other tip, which I'll show you. I can do it with the other side as well. Turn your paper rather than turning yourself. Just turn the paper the way you want it. And you can see I do have a little more control because I'm right on the end. I want to just keep it in the lines. I do have a little more control with this blunt tip because it's firmer. The other end, because it's a brush tip, it's just so fragile. It is fragile. You'd have to be careful that if you press too hard, it'll make it misshapen. But that other softer end works when I've got a larger area here, as you can see. And so what I'm trying to do, I don't know if you can see that, I'm actually going into the dark ink, because now I'm working with the light ink, and I'm trying to bring out some of that dark ink and blend it with the lighter color so that I get a little bit of depth here, and I don't want to see that line where the two colors come together. And you can kind of play around with that. I could go along maybe some of these, like I could do a little bit of depth there, a little darker there. I don't know, sometimes it's hard to see it on camera. But I'm using the lines that are in the stamp as a guide to create some shading. That's one of the wonderful things about Stampin' Up. The stamps they just have a lot of depth to them, and the artists give you guidelines, so it makes you look really good. All right, that's the end of that. Very straightforward. So now we're gonna go ahead and punch that out. So this is they call it a lockdown punch because it's got a lock. You just move that to open and close it. You just slide that over. And then you're gonna hold, probably, there's two ways. You could hold in your hand. When you're just getting started, sometimes it's easier just to lay the punch down on the table. And I'm looking at it, lining it up, and then I'm gonna kind of go halfway down, kind of grip the Dragonfly, grip the paper halfway so I can see, am I lined up? I'm a little bit off. So I'm gonna lift it up again. It's hard because the camera's in my way, so it's kind of hard for me to see, but primarily I'm looking at the body because of the lines of the body, and then I just press my hand, push it down, and there you go. There you go. And as you can see with the blends, it does go through the paper, not to worry. But it's actually, that could be really pretty. You could do the blends first, and then you could stamp on the back side, and that would be attractive as well. Okay, so let me get that. Nope, not yet. So now I'm gonna kind of curl that a little bit and curl the tail up. And all I'm doing is taking the paper with between my two fingers and kind kind of curling it. And then we're going to add a little Winkostella. You know, a little bit of bling is always a good thing. So I'm just taking this Winkostella. It's like a glitter brush. And I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but it just adds a little shimmer to the wings. So just a little extra something. Again, kind of turn the dragonfly around rather than turning my body. And just apply it with this brush. This is also kind of fragile. It's just a thin brush. And you kind of have to move it around in the light. I don't know if you can see that in the light. You can see the little bit of the glitter. And I'll give that just a minute to dry, and then we're going to attach. It dries pretty quickly, and we're going to attach that right there. So now I can take that out of the way. And I'm also going to add a little, this was right here the whole time. This is my take your pick tool. It's got the two ends to it. This is what I was going to use. I was going to use this end for the glue dot. But it's also got this flat end too. So if you inadvertently kind of glue something that you shouldn't, that flat end can sometimes, you can kind of get it up. Okay, so these are the Genial Gems. I just really like this color, this soft, I think it's a soft sea foam. It's the same color as the background there. And I'm just picking that up with the little end of the take your pick tool. It's like a, I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a putty. Yeah, it's like a putty. And it just helps you pick up the gem. And there's these have adhesive backed. So I just pick it up with the adhesive and put it on the head there. Kind of cute. All right. So now put that back together. And the last thing I'm going to do is take another dimensional and put that on the back of my dragonfly. And we're going to attach him to the card. And my Winkostella, see, it's dry already. So I was trying to be careful just in case it wasn't, but it is dry. And I'm going to kind of bring my wings back up a little bit. And I'm going to have them overlap, but the sticky part is all going to be on the white card base. There you go. Isn't that cute? Here's your little envelope. Very simple, very straightforward. I hope that maybe, if you're a new stamper, that you have learned something today, something that maybe will help you be more successful in your stamping. And if you make a card with this layout, maybe use different paper, whatever, I'd love for you to go ahead and post it in the comments. Show me what you're doing with the materials that you have on hand. And as I said, my name is Linda Edwards. I am with Crafty Heron Designs. I would love to help you with your crafting journey. That is one of my favorite things about being a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator is just helping other people unleash their inner creativity. Bye-bye for now.